Do you see that vegans tend to address all these things, or do some of them just go into it without the knowledge and then they don't feel well?
It's interesting you should ask that because, I basically spent the last 40 years of my life creating resources that help people achieve really exceptional health, eating either exclusively or predominantly plant-based diets. I think there was a lack of resources for several years. And I've written, 13 books now to try to help people ensure that they're designing decent diets. And so I see it all. I see so many people doing it exceptionally well, raising families, making sure that everything's there. But I've also run across people who, have just gone without many resources to assist them in the transition. And those are the people that sometimes can get into trouble, and particularly with vitamin B12. So, and I think now, this wasn't the case maybe 40 years ago, but today I don't think there are very many vegans that aren't aware of the few nutrients that they need to make sure they have a source of. And of course, the one that stands out is B12.
What are some of the, some people that go on the vegan diet, I've asked personally, they just really don't feel well and it doesn't work for them. Why do you think that happens? Does it happen to a high percent or a very low percent? Why?
I think it happens because people are first of all, not making the transition appropriately. Secondly, sometimes making the transition too fast. And so you might not feel well if you don't allow time for your gut flora, for example, to adjust to a higher fiber diet. You may feel bloated and gassy and just not feel very good. But the people that make the transition, my experience most of the time is that they feel more energetic. They feel, just better all around. They lose weight. They feel lighter. They feel better. And I think one of the big problems when people make the transition, when they don't feel well, is that they haven't replaced the foods appropriately. So you can't just say, well, I'm not going to eat meat and dairy anymore. You need to think about what foods you're going to replace those with. So for meat, you need to be eating enough legumes, enough of the meat replacements. For dairy, greens and beans, and you can get calcium from, but also fortified non-dairy milks. I've been eating vegan for about, close to 40 years now. And I shouldn't say that, over 30 years now, probably about 33 years since 1989. And I can tell you, I can run as fast as I did when I was 30. I can still do physically all of the things I could do. I can still do the splits and handstands and headstands and, all that stuff. I don't see a big difference in my body. And I'm in my 60s now. And so my gut feels great. I've never been on medications. And I can say most of my relatives who are eating an omnivorous diet can't say the same. And I know many, many people who are like me, who are long-term vegans, who are extraordinarily healthy for their age. And if you look at the people of the blue zones, these are the places where people live the longest, healthiest lives, where there are more centenarians than anywhere else on the planet. Every single one of the blue zones is predominantly plant-based. One of the blue zones is actually in the United States. It's in a place called Loma Linda, California. And that's where the Seventh-day Adventists are, who have extraordinarily long lives. They live on average 10 years longer than the average American. And I can remember being in Loma Linda and, meeting a lot of the people there who in their 80s and 90s are still super active and still, I remember running across a 92-year-old man who was still speaking all over the world and doing all those sorts of things. And this is what we see in the blue zone. And I think that tells us, to me, it's really the acid test.
What do people experience when they first go on it, vegan diet, and then after like a month or two, and then after longer than that, what do
Well, in my experience, and I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of people who have made this transition, and I can tell you from personal experience as well, because my family transitioned. And generally, what happens in the first month or so is you lose weight. You feel more energetic, partly because you've lost weight. And for me, I had a stomach ache my whole life. That disappeared because I stopped consuming dairy, and obviously I was sensitive to dairy. So for a lot of people, they feel better. And then, down the road, if you're not doing it properly and you're lacking something like vitamin B12, you will definitely start feeling worse. If you're doing it properly, you will continue to feel great for decades.